So let it be written. So let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. You want to make something creative, probably an RPG product. Do you need a workflow? James, do I need a workflow? Really?
So I've met you, Tim, and you are the prime candidate of a workflow. No, which is entirely true. But in all seriousness, everyone needs a workflow. And I think if you are watching this video and you think, I don't need that, I don't think this applies to me, I think that means you either are way off or you have a workflow and you maybe don't realize it. So that's the big thing is if you try to do anything, just about, in my opinion, but especially creative things without something like this, it can feel like the hard part is putting it together, not being creative. So I think it's very important to remember that a very simple workflow is very important, and that this video hopefully will help, kind of get you on the right track.
Yeah, and as far as getting into actual tips for workflow, ways that you can kind of start to refine your own process, the biggest thing that helps me a lot is deadlines. And not just one single deadline kind of at the end point, but what I would call like micro deadlines of break up the project down into different elements and set a deadline for each element. And even if you need to, each kind of part within that element. So if I'm going to have a book that I'm going to release in 6 months, it's great to say like, okay, here's my release date. I have 6 months to do everything. But then if you think that you're on good track and suddenly you haven't done as much as you thought you did, and you have like 2 months left to then finish this huge, huge amount of work, that's going to cause a lot of stress, maybe even kill the project if you don't have the right sort of incentive to keep you going. And it can be really difficult to kind of keep track of what needs to be done and how much you need to do kind of as you keep going to make sure that everything stays on track. So for example, if I have a book that has like 10 different regions in it, across 6 months, I might need to say, okay, so after 2 weeks, I'm going to have the first one done. After 2 other weeks, I'm going to have the second one done. After 3 weeks, I'm going to do the third one. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break, and then I'm going to do, and it's to kind of set them so you have a sort of target point to follow at each stage. At least for me, I almost never get anything done without deadlines. I'm very much a procrastinator by nature. So having something to say like, no, I need to do this now. I can't save it for later. Even if the book's not going to need to be released yet, it can still make a huge difference just to have those guiding posts. And a bonus little tip is if you can get somebody else to keep you accountable to those deadlines instead of self-enforcing them, even better. The second that I started working with these guys, my productivity skyrocketed. And I'm not even joking, simply just for the fact of having Tim say like, hey, you said you were going to do this by Friday. It's Thursday. How's it looking? Oh, shoot. Yeah, I should do that. Here it is. It's done. So have deadlines, but not just one big deadline. Break it down into pieces that you can start to work across. Keep yourself to those deadlines. And if you can't keep yourself to those deadlines, find a buddy who will be able to kind of hold your feet to the fire if necessary.
So in this day and age, it's important to understand that your workflow has to be dynamic. You got to be flexible. You're walking around all day, you're busy, you have some sort of work-life balance, and then you're trying to probably inject creativity and work into an already existing schedule. So one of the things that I've learned is making sure I have a mobile workflow. And that means that all day, every day, you, me, we have ideas. What do you do with those ideas? If it's a scattershot approach, you're going to lose ideas. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. I think it's wasteful. But if you're okay with just, if it tickles your brain enough to just think of it and know that that's the end, fine. And it's not good enough for me. It saved my bacon a lot of times being able to have things that I thought of 3 weeks ago as this precious ingredient to inject into a new idea to get me 3 times further immediately. So what do I mean? All right, I'm going to give you a very practical, basic workflow. You have a mobile device. I'm sure of it, right? I'm sure you have a mobile device. And if you don't, get a notebook and a pen. When you have an idea, write it down or type it in one document. You have one document, not 50 with different ideas. You have one. And you start this at the beginning of your week, whatever that is. For 5 to 7 days, depending on your work week, whenever you hit that first day off or your break, your job And this is how you start, because it's also easy to sort of do rote automatic work. You're not having to think about this. Your job is to sit wherever you can on a laptop or a computer, put on music that you love, not a video. You're not allowed to watch a video. You have to put on music that you love. You're not allowed to listen to another human talk under no circumstances. These are the rules. Music that you love, and then you slowly take the ideas from your phone, you email them to yourself, and you take them and put them into an online Google Doc, right? And we'll go into, in the deep dive, I'm going to talk a lot about Google Drive. This is important, okay? You put those things into a Google Doc where they belong, and that's how you start. Because the first thing that most people do that they fail at with their workflow is their ideas, these precious, sweet, sweet seeds, die. And then when you're pressed and you have to sit in front of a blank white screen and you have nothing, you're like, oh God, what am I going to do? It's way easier to go back over to this doc, this thing that you've had 3 weeks ago that's perfect idea. So that is my thought, is to have a mobile workflow. Put the ideas in here, in this phone, and then once a week, you put those ideas from the phone into your Google Drive, and that is how you're going to have mobile productivity.
So for me, when I'm creating a workflow, what I like to do is I try to keep myself out of it as much as possible in the moment, which is a very weird thing to say without explaining it. The idea is I make the workflow decisions first, if I can, to avoid having to stop everything and make the decisions in the middle of something. And specifically, I try to come up with rules. And an example to directly apply this to something you just heard is how Tim said. Those are his rules that he follows. What that means is when he goes, when I work today, am I going to put on a show or am I going to watch music? He knows I've already made that decision. Tim, before this, has made that decision that knows if I put a person on, it's not going to work. The rule is you don't. The important thing is those rules can change, but you want them to not change in the midst of things, because that is what helps me get work done. Rules allow me to be productive and creative. So just like what Tim said, I sit down and I go, okay, I'm writing right now. I have a few rules. That means I can put something, in brackets. I don't have to fully explain something. I can refer to something that's going to, I'm going to explain later. But no matter what, I'm not going to go back and start editing because it's writing time right now. And then vice versa for editing. It seems so simple, but without something to stop your instinct from going, I'll just edit that one sentence real quick, you don't have a workflow. You don't have something that keeps you consistent. The other thing is, and this also ties in perfectly with what Jeff said, especially when you're breaking things down into smaller chunks, you know more what to expect. One of the biggest issues you can have is with a deadline, you go, I'll knock that out in an hour. And then you sit down and you go, oh my gosh, I forgot how much was here. But with the micro deadlines and the rules, you go, okay, well, when I sit down, I need this long to write that many words usually. So that's 2 hours. And then if it gets down to this many words, you have those rules to allow you to plan your deadlines so that you're not like, all right, I'm going to write 40,000 words tomorrow. Well, that's probably not going to happen unless you are very good at it and that's your day job, It's just not going to, even then, 40,000 is so lofty. But specifically that idea that you will be the most productive when you're putting all of your brain power into exactly what you're doing and not into whether or not you should be doing it. And that's why it's so important to have a workflow.
So we want to know, what is your workflow? Or what's your biggest workflow problem? And maybe we can follow up in the comments and try to help you with it. We will do a deep dive on this where we're going to talk way more at length and show you much more specific examples that you can literally adopt as your own. But for now, what do you think? Where you feel like you're fouling up? Are you watching videos when you're supposed to be working? I just need to get inspired by Netflix for one show. Midnight later. So that's what I want to know. But we're Tabletop Terrors. We're all about fun, creativity, and tabletop games. If you like that kind of stuff, consider subscribing. And yeah, we want you to be a part of the family. I think we'll end it with a Tabtarian toast. What do you say?
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
May you conquer everything you undertake.
Sláinte.
Sláinte.
So, when we first started Tabletop Terrors, we had nowhere to film, so we would move around my house, and you can still find it on the channel to this day. There's a video where we sit in front of my dresser. We literally set the camera up, and because we didn't have a backdrop, you can see the drawers of the dresser behind us, and we're sitting slouched because the dresser wasn't tall enough to actually, so we had to like sit slouched. So in the old days, we didn't have enough of an actual workflow, so we would just, James would come over and we would work until he said, okay, man, I really gotta go. And even then, I'd try to keep him there an extra 30 minutes. So we would just work for like 8 hours and produce nothing. It was terrible. So yeah, I think we should go back to that.